Hey everyone, welcome back to Kings Talk presented by Cap City Crown. As always, this is John, and this is Tony with John.
That would be interesting if you just went with that and see if anybody's paying attention. That would be a
Yeah,
really good, kind of like a Nielsen ratings type thing. Get a gist of who's paying attention out there.
yeah, that's a. Anyways, this is Tony, the other dork's John. Um, yeah, well, here we are. It's Tuesday, September 27th, and you know what? I think basketball is back. Training camp starts today. Media day was yesterday, and we're inching closer to the start of that season. I think it opens up on the 19th, October 19th against Portland, or I think it's the 19th, right?
Yep.
But
Got it.
I got it. Yeah, we're getting so close, less than a month away, and I don't know, John, how you feeling? What's going on with media day? What's going on with training camp?
I mean, I think for any sport, any team, media day or the kind of beginning of whether it's training camp in basketball or football or spring training, whatever it is, there's always that extra pep in everybody's step. And I think what's interesting about this particular Sacramento Kings media day and, as entrance into training camp today, is that there is a discernible shift in confidence. And we knew that there was obvious additions and improvements to the roster and arguably to the coaching staff. I mean, we'll have to see its results based league, and that kind of matters for a team that hasn't made the playoffs. And the deal. So it was interesting to kind of hear the common themes of confidence up and down the roster. People talking about healthy competition. That's the way Terence Davis put it. These things that everything seems to be centered around the things that you absolutely want going into camp. Things that, frankly, haven't really been the case in past years. You're looking at a situation where this is a, roster that is competition-wise. I mean, you have certain competitions for roster spots at the bottom of the roster, but a lot of it is it's a mix of different, varied, and very good talent that Mike Brown and his staff is going to have to figure out how that mix is going to work, what it's going to look like. And, it seemed like last year, like, for example, you kind of knew what the roster was going to do. What it was going to look like. I mean, you had like 6 guys that you just knew were they were either not going to be on the team or, they were going to be at the, inactive level of the roster. And then you also had guys like people that kind of ended up sticking around. I wouldn't characterize them necessarily as that. Like, Davion Jones, Chimezie Metu, say what you will, especially Davion Jones has really proven he belongs in this league. But at that time, it's not like a situation where it's like you had the most experienced guy that's proven that he has found his footing in this league necessarily. And, you also had, Tristan Thompson for all the vocal leadership and experience that he brought last year. It's like, he entered the year as essentially the backup center, right? And it's just like, you could just see how much more dynamic the roster is and just how the questions that need to be answered regarding rotation and whatnot is completely different. The way you think about it, the way it's going to be answered. Again, it's not necessarily, it's about how things are going to mix together. There's just so much in the pot right now that's good. And I guess that's probably the best way to put it. It just seems like you're just trying to figure out pieces. You don't have so many gaps, I guess,
Yeah, I mean, we kind of touched on that in last week's podcast and how, like you said, guys aren't coming into camp like with not even really fighting for a roster spot, but like in years past, like Jemias Ramsey, Robert Wooder, like guys like those, they were given roster spots on this team because there was no other competition against them to make a roster spot, and it kind of just shows you like the difference going into this year where, for that 15th spot, you might have, like a Chima Moneke, KZ Okpala, and Sam Merrill fighting for that. But it's like, you know what, those are guys who have to prove it in this league for sure. And Sam Merrill and KZ Okpala at least have some NBA experience. But, those are like three solid guys I would want fighting for my 15th roster spot.
Another point about those guys.
Yeah.
I mean, out of two of the three, Sam Merrill has no connection to Mike Brown. Mike Brown knows the other two. It's not like Mike Brown is coming into this knowing basically everybody, like all these, Dellavedova and I don't know what. He's got this connection to Dellavedova, but I'm trying to remember: is there a connection with Cook?
With
the Warriors.
With the Warriors, of course.
Yeah, duh. And so, he knows all these guys. He knows, he knows Metu and all these other fellows that were in the playing for all these fellows, these guys, these men that are playing for the Nigerian national team. I don't know. I'm talking like it's the 40s, but he knows these guys. There's not question marks. Like, I don't know. Some of those guys were rookies last year, just complete or 1 year of experience under their belt. Just you're not even sure what you're evaluating, but it's he has a head start. And that's another kind of theme of this kind of this mood at camp, I guess, and it's just that, like De'Aaron Fox said it, aside from the guys that were playing in Eurobasket, a lot of the guys have been at the facility over the last month playing pickup games, and they're gaining chemistry and they've been in the facility and they're figuring things out. And, there's a head start there in regards to the chemistry, in regards to the evaluation of talent. And just, I guess, to go back to comparing between last year and this year, it's what we said last week. Think about Metu's standing. Metu is far less secure, I think, this year. I mean, it's not like he was 100% secure. He didn't get playing time initially last year. But, this year, he's, like we said, he's kind of maybe further on to the edge than we initially think. I mean, he definitely has a chance to be in the mix at power forward without a doubt. But can he do that? I don't know. We'll have to see, which is kind of a common theme also, as training camp starting today. So we have really nothing to go on as of right now. But, going forward, we will. And hopefully we'll be able to answer some of those questions. But, these are the kind of the themes at camp. And it's good. And I mean, you're seeing confidence, like I said, from all over the roster. I mean, Rashawn Holmes sounds really confident. He was asked about whether or not he can coexist with Sabonis on the floor. He said, we're basketball players at the end of the day. We're going to figure it out. We're both really good, is essentially what he said. He feels really confident about, all the things off the court and the injuries, the thing with the eye, I think COVID setbacks and whatnot last season, just kind of disrupting any ability to find a rhythm last year. He also said that off-court stuff doesn't really bother him, but it's I think one of the things you learn pretty quickly is that when athletes talk about things, especially of that nature, they're very rarely telling you the entire truth. It probably affected him. He's an athlete. He takes pride in what he does, and he's not going to make excuses. It probably definitely did affect him. So he's radiating with confidence, and even all the way down at the end of the totem pole, for lack of a better way of putting it, Chima Moneke, he referred to himself as probably the best cutter in the world, which, I mean, we've mentioned that, that's one of his strengths. And he sounds very, very confident, and everybody in between. And it's just, I don't know if you want to touch upon any of that. There's just kind of throwing it out on the page there.
No, I mean, all of that's awesome. Something that you did say, and I think it's awesome, is when Fox said, people called their summers early and, reported to Sacramento to get those pickup games in, get that practice in. And, especially for Fox, who, I mean, I think he is the biggest question mark for the success of this team. You have Sabonis, but Sabonis is proven. He's a 2-time All-Star for a reason. Sabonis, you're going to expect pretty good numbers next year, right? I don't know exactly. He might average 20. He might average what he did last year, 18 and 12. But, that's
somewhere in there.
Yeah, you're right. But I could see him averaging 22. Anyway, but it's Fox. He's the big question mark. I think the success of this team is really going to be dependent on how, quick Fox how hot Fox starts off the year. And we've known that in the last several years, Fox starts off really poorly. And it just, sets the Kings way behind. And we saw that last year. He was just struggling, especially with Halliburton in the lineup with him. He just couldn't get it together. And, he finished off the season very strong, but, there's reports that he came in, out of shape and came into the season last year out of shape. And, and I think he took that to heart and he, working out. He brought. Did he ever bring Luke Lux on his honeymoon? Lux.
I don't really think. I don't think Mike Brown was 100% serious when he said that.
No, they were.
But I'm sure.
I think
serious.
No, yeah.
I'm just taking it from the introductory press conference for Brown. But it's like at first when he said that, I was like, oh, that's weird. And then like I listened to it back and I was like, oh, it sounds like he's joking. I thought he was joking, but what did you hear? Or
I thought there was like a photo. Yeah, no, right. There's a photo. It's in Italy.
Oh, he did?
It's Darren Fox and wife working out with new Kings assistant coach Luke Lux on their honeymoon in Italy. So no, like they were serious. Luke Lux went to Italy with Fox to work out with Darren on his honeymoon. And
right.
And his new wife sounds awesome. She's a former basketball player, and I think you said she met Lux at like a athletes to coaches camp or something.
Like a clinic or something for college athletes transitioning to coaching afterwards.
Yeah, and so she seems very supportive of his goals, and she knows the heat that Fox got. So it's just,
you're pointing to so many connections that Fox has in and on and off the court here, and you just throw Malik Monk in there too. I mean,
yeah,
he talks about how he talks to him every day. Now he gets to see him every day. They've been just like throwing flashy passes nobody would expect or see in some of these pickup games we're talking about. He just seems totally bought into it, and he mentioned that about everybody. I think it's interesting. I don't want to read too much into something he didn't necessarily say, but he did say that he feels like people have bought into this, like what we're doing, that people are excited. And I think that that's code for like he is. And like, whether it was like him being a young player early on, and sometimes that can be hard. Maybe that's an issue for a young player to kind of adjust at the beginning of the season. And then like you're talking about, there are other issues, all of a sudden there's another really talented and promising point guard on the roster. You have like COVID issues and disruptions to kind of like preparation. And he added the weight, like you mentioned last year. There have been like specific things that you could kind of point to. I mean, granted, it could still be that he's a slow starter. We'll have to find out. But it seems like he's really showing that this is really different for him in a lot of ways. And again, he'll have to prove it because he has made such a bad tendency of such slow starts. And I think you're 100% right that he is like, you're going to get a good idea of how the Kings are based on how Fox is. And if he can do it start to finish and remain relatively consistent and healthy, man, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess an interesting question that I think about sometimes is I'm like, okay, what are the chances the Kings have 2 All-Stars this year? I'm like, that's not like getting 2 All-Stars is tough. The Kings just probably want 1 All-Star. That'd be enough. Who do you think it would be, Fox or Sabonis? And don't even take into account the fact that maybe Sabonis has a little bit of an easier path because the point guard situation is a little like tougher, I guess. Or maybe we'd say like guard is like a more dense, position in terms of making it into the All-Star team. But take that out of the equation. Just like, who do you think is like going to be that guy? Like if you really had to like pick.
I think it'll be Sabonis. I don't know. It's not like you're trying to team me up for a Fox, but I think it'll still be Sabonis. I just think Sabonis is so good, and sometimes like what he does, it's not flashy. He's not like Fox where he's like probably gonna pop off for 35, once every other week, which I hope Fox can do. But Sabonis, like that 18 and 12, it's not like exciting or anything. But he does it efficiently, and I really hope he can average about like 5-6 assists a game this season. I think him and Fox are really gonna share that assist load because you kind of want to see Fox as a point guard, as an elite point guard in this league, to average like 8 assists at least, right? Like 7.5 plus. But with Sabonis on that team, we all know the offense is really going to run through that guy. So I think I want to see, honestly, Sabonis and Fox average, 10, 11 assists between the both of them. That's why I think Sabonis will get it. I think those assist numbers, if he's averaging above 5 and along with 18 and 12, that's a pretty good stat line.
I think you're right, but I think just on the assist thing, it's in such a pass heavy offense. Everybody's going to be. I can't imagine Fox getting more than like 7. I would honestly think that he'd get it somewhere in the 6 range, 6 to 7 a game. Just because I think I don't know, maybe I'd have to look it up, but I don't know what Steph Curry's assist totals, and I'm not comparing them. I'm just saying as the point guards of teams that are going to be very pass heavy, like when Steve Kerr came to Golden State. If I'm not mistaken, like Steph Curry was kind of in that range. But on the question of which one would be a all-star, I agree with you that it would be Sabonis. And I think one of the things that'll kind of make that super obvious is that if the Kings are playing well and they're winning games, and you're talking about one all-star going, Sabonis is the best team rep because he makes everybody around him better. He's the difference maker, and he would be such a good representative of a team that's doing well. Got to get there first, but I could totally envision that. But for the sake of the argument, Fox being an all-star, and again, it's more likely that Sabonis is going to be an all-star over Fox, but it could be. Fox would have to, the way he closed out last year, Sabonis trade to his injury, he'd have to do that for, from October to February, and hopefully onward. But he'd have to do exactly that, which would mean not only scoring 28 a game, but hitting threes, playing defense, being the leader of this team. And, I think he can do most of those things. I think the big questions are the 3-point consistency and the defensive consistency. Everybody knows that De'Aaron Fox is low in the analytics stats for defense, except when he plays really, tough competition. So I've noted this with Herter, is that Herter has a way better defensive rating in the playoffs. He actually puts out highlight clips of his defensive play in the playoffs. And in the regular season, he has his moments. He's, like I always say, he's still probably a two-way player. He's so good offensively, and he's pretty solid defensively. But he's not great, But in the playoffs, he can be. And it's if you, especially with Mike Brown running things, if you can just get people to buy into that, that could be a big thing. And I think that could really affect Fox. And of course, Brown has that connection to Fox from high school. He said he was a dog defensively when he saw him. So he just got to get him to buy into that. And, we're just talking about how bought into the system and how bought into this team and their chances Fox seems, and how confident and locked in he looks. Or not looks, but sounds. We don't really know anything. His camp's just starting. But, there's definitely a path to Fox being an all-star. But I think you're right. I think chances are that Sabonis is would be the guy.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's either they're both going to be all-stars or neither of them will be all-stars. Because
fair,
unless one of them puts a ridiculous stat line out. But I think more realistically, for the Kings to have an all-star is that the Kings are going to have to prove that they're one of the better teams in the league. And for that to happen, both Fox and Sabonis will have to go on a tear, right? The load's going to be on their back. So if the Kings are doing well, that means Fox and Sabonis are doing well. And that means, if they're a 4th seed, that's crazy, right? We'll say even 6th seed, which is still crazy, but man, it's kind of what you have to do to become an all-star in this league. You have to be on a winning team. So I
It
mean,
goes hand in hand. It's in lockstep. You're totally right.
yeah. So
They probably,
I,
it's almost, honestly, I think you could, betting odds would probably be no All-Star.
yeah, probably. I would bet no All Star this year. Maybe next year a little different, but
Mm-hmm.
there's always surprise teams every season. There's always like, like the Timberwolves last year. Look what they did. They were a pretty good team that was, on par with the Kings for being like one of the worst run teams for a while. Um, they made some moves in the recent years, but I mean, look what the Kings did. The Timberwolves traded for D'Angelo Russell, um, or a couple of years ago, right? And drafted well in Anthony Edwards, and look where they ended up last year. Like they were a solid team, made the playoffs. Look at the Kings trade for an All-Star and Sabonis, draft a guy like Keegan Murray, have Davion Mitchell coming into his second year. Davion Mitchell's no Anthony Edwards, but I don't. He's just a couple moves away, just like the Timberwolves were, and you can argue that the Kings are, looking at potentially the same season of what the Timberwolves did last year.
I think it was the guy from the two guys from 1140. I forget their names, but they were
Carmichael Dave,
no, not Carmichael. I would remember that, but
Jason
Cattles,
Ross.
was it?
Oh, Nick Cattles.
Yeah, and his partner. I
I don't
don't
know.
know.
I don't listen to that one ever.
But I caught a little bit of what they were saying, and they were talking to Davion Mitchell, and they were like, this is interesting because this is Monty McNair's team, and like we've mentioned that before, it's an obvious thing. And one of the things that you're seeing is it's not only is just like, is he getting like this kind of shooting oriented team that can move the ball and run the floor and maybe even have the tools to put together a good or a solid, or at least I guess you would say a better team defense overall. But the big factor is that with the changes that he's made and just the draft picks that he's been able to make, it's just like this team is oriented towards guys that, especially, as James Ham has made note of, guys between that 24 to 26 age, like Fox and Herter and Monk and all these guys. I think Sabonis is 26. It's these guys that are not just young still, but they're about to step into their prime. They're about to step into their late 20s. Like that is that moment where hopefully, and this is what Kevin Herter said at a media day, was that you're hoping that you can kind of get into that prime, and like you add that to the fact that all these guys want to win too. It's just it can become a perfect recipe, and that's such a conscious decision by McNair. And I know he made note of that in it might have been the press conference for Monk and Herter, but like some of these subtleties, I don't know if it's not the name on the Twitter account anymore, but I think it was for a long time in McNair We Trust. And I think that this is, at least going into it, this is definitely one of those things where this deserves a lot of credit, I think. Of course, results will play out, but, what do you think?
I mean, like you said, the name of the Twitter was in McNair We Trust. And I've been telling everyone, just trust McNair. You can just tell, even after like that Halliburton draft, and then especially after the Davion Mitchell draft, it's just like, okay, like granted, he didn't make a lot of like big like free agency moves or really even any trades until that Sabonis trade. And yeah, it's a little hard to jump on the McNair bandwagon, but it's just like, he didn't do anything wrong. He made the right picks, made the right moves. He didn't make any bad trades. He didn't, sign any bad contracts or anything. So, I knew it was just a matter of time. And, and he didn't rush it either. Like, of course, everyone wants stuff rushed. And that was, the issue going back with Vivek. He wanted to win now. And that, that just kept setting us back every time. So, I mean, it'll be McNair's third year. We've waited patiently. And I honestly, we might need one more year until we really see the Kings' full potential. But I mean, the team he was given, and and then looking at the team right now, it's night and day. And it's awesome to see. He's just going to continue just to make the right moves, and I mean, he's going to get extended. There's no way he doesn't. Even if he doesn't make the playoffs this year, there's no way this guy doesn't get extended. I don't know if there's been any more talk surrounding that. I haven't heard anything, but McNair's the guy.
He wouldn't comment on his contract status at media day. Wouldn't comment on it.
Which is, I don't know. Like, what are you waiting for, Vivek? Like, you're not going to get a better guy than this at the moment. He's just very smart, very calm-headed. He's just, like I said, he's like Trey Lyles out on the floor. Just makes the right move every time.
We can talk about Trey Lyles in a second, but just to kind of piggyback, I mean, I guess just to kind of close up on this kind of McNair, this being McNair's team and whatnot. First of all, there had to have been some period with him taking over Vlade Divac, which was basically, a combination of Vlade Divac and, Vivek Ranadive, essentially, and all sorts of hands on the wheel type things. There had to be a period for McNair to be able to kind of untangle the cords, I know everybody's got AirPods these days, but you know what I mean. I think that's an expression that still makes sense. Mm-hmm. And, finally, I guess you could say he waited for his pitch or not. Maybe he felt pressure or whatnot. I don't know. But he made some pretty good moves, and it's definitely going to be interesting. We don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting. And I think you're right to say something that it's like nobody should definitely have their hopes up that the Kings are going to make the playoffs. The chances that the Kings are one of the top 6 seeds that have that secured playoff spot is very, very low. I mean, that's very difficult. You're talking about superseding very good teams with very, very good players, and that's just tough. But can the Kings be one of the play-in teams? Yeah, I mean there's a very realistic chance of that. Like, you should definitely, and then you can become a playoff team that way. But you got to make the play-in first. I mean, there's definitely like legitimate reasons to think that can happen. But like you said, you might need an extra year, and we're talking about guys that are 24 to 26. One more year closer to their prime or further into their prime. I mean, that can be 1 year. Sounds like, oh man, I don't want a year. Wait a year, man. That's 12 months. I don't want to wait that. But it's like they could come back and be so much better. Like, the improvement could be ridiculous. It could be insane. And that's just something to keep in mind. And I think you could probably expect, given the talent of these guys, a way better season this year. And then going forward, I think you can expect some form of success that you haven't seen in a long time in the next, 2 to 3 years. And I think that really has to do with the way McNair set it up. And I think people can see what he's doing, and it's smart and it's methodical, maybe a little conservative, at least at first. But once he swung for the fences, I mean, things are in position. And speaking of, McNair guys, one of the guys that you could see, one of the most recent McNair guys through and through is this year's draft pick, Keegan Murray. And, we were talking about All-Stars a second ago, and you're talking about maybe next year. And I said, yeah, I was thinking to myself, the chances for next year having an All-Star is way higher, because I think Keegan Murray will be in the mix by that time. I think by that time he'll be in the mix. I don't think he will be an All-Star, but I think it definitely ups the chances of a potential All-Star. I don't know if I'm too... I mean, if a lot of people have a different mix of feelings. They're usually good about Keegan Murray. Again, camp starting today. It's hard to see or know what he looks like in relation to the offense and whatnot. But in terms of what his rookie season is going to look like, can he win Rookie of the Year? Will he be the third option by the end of the season? What option is he right now? I mean, there's sorts of questions and interesting things to think about in the outlook of what Keegan Murray's rookie season is going to look like. I don't know if you wanted to comment on any of that.
Keegan Murray. I mean, I really like Keegan Murray. I'm not gonna lie. I wanted Ivy initially, just I thought he was the best player available. But I mean, after summer league, there's not much room to talk. I mean, it's not the NBA, but like that dude, it's exactly what the Kings need. And if he can do that to a high level, then awesome. And rookies, I'm never really that high on rookies, especially on the Kings. I know this year's a little different, but I don't know, rookies. It's just a different style of game than high school and college and all that. So it's definitely like a learning opportunity, a growing experience for rookies. And I don't know. I mean, I think he'll help. I think he's going to be a decent 3-point threat at the 4 position where defenses have to pay attention to him. I don't know if he'll be like a game changer. I know you're talking about him maybe becoming the third option at the end of the year, and I can see that if everything goes well with him, and he doesn't really have those rookie yips, I guess, like those growing pains that a lot of rookies do. But I don't know. I tend to keep my expectations for first year players a little low. But next year, like of course, I'm going to expect big things out of him. He's the 4th overall pick, and based on what we see this year, of course, that's going to show what I'm going to be expecting. But I expect good things. I don't know. I feel like I'm not giving a very direct answer. I'm kind of dancing around it.
No, I think you're I think you're being very you're being very prudent about how you go into this. And I think you're right about rookies. I mean, I think the one thing that's a little different about Murray is it's like we kind of like one of the things that people said about him consistently going into the draft is it's like, oh, Keegan Murray's ceiling's not very high, but he is one of the more NBA ready players. What he does, his maturity level, all these things, he's right up there with Paolo Banchero, and he proved that in summer league. And it seems, based on reporting that a lot of GMs and scouts felt that way too, that they were realistically actually just number 1 and 2 in terms of the draft board. And, you could probably factor in, I think ceiling obviously factors into guys like Holmgren and even Jabari Smith, just because they could in a cup, like those guys are a little bit more projects and they could definitely springboard into being really special players. Whereas you can really see the makeup of the structure of how Murray and Banchero can play in this league. How they execute is obviously the question, and how high they can go in their careers is another question, and that are not worth answering, which I think is part of what you're saying. And I would just say though that it's just like there's the experience thing, and also just like the factor that, like, I guess in terms of like being the third option, wouldn't necessarily be like him clear, like, oh, he's averaging 18 points a game. Like, I don't know, like maybe like 13 points a game in a mix where maybe like Harrison Barnes is scoring like, 15 or 16 and Herter is scoring somewhere in the mid 10s range. There's going to be like a mix of scoring options. So maybe that's not even like the real question is the third option. It's just, like what's a realistic stat line for Keegan Murray, I guess? Downey?
Sorry. I was on mute. I think a realistic stat line would be like around 13 and 6, 6.5. I don't know, as a stretch 4, if he's going to, get into the 7s and 8s in rebounding, maybe into the 7s, but maybe not as a rookie. But kind of going back to the question, you asked me his realistic stat line, and then you asked me about rookie of the year. Like, does that sound like a rookie of the year stat line to you? And no, it really doesn't. It's nothing special. And so I think Keegan Murray's really good, but I don't think he'll win rookie of the year. If he was on a different team where he'd be more of a focal point, a team rebuilding, a team with not, expectations like the Kings where play-in, playoffs are the goal, then sure. Like, I think he could be rookie of the year. I think he has that talent. I think he's one of the better players in this draft class. But it's kind of like Davion Mitchell last year. Davion Mitchell's stat line, to end the season, it wasn't anything impressive. It wasn't crazy. But if you start putting his like per 36 or when he started starting full time towards the end of the season, his numbers were just as good as the top rookies out there. I can't remember who won rookie of the year last year. Why am I blanking?
Scotty Barnes.
Yeah, Scotty Barnes. And Scotty Barnes was really good. He deserved it. But I mean, if you look at like Jalen Green and those guys that were picked 1 and 2 and things like that, he was, when he started starting consistently, just like these guys got to start all year. I mean, his numbers weren't far off, and you could have made the case that he was you couldn't have made it on what he did, but if he if he did start all these games and have the same minutes and role as these other rookies, then I think he could have been right up there in the conversation. But I think that's going to be Murray's problem this year, is that he's going to be good. He's going to be a solid player. Again, my expectations aren't high, but I expect him to hit the 3 ball consistently and be like a threat on the perimeter and play good D. I think he's like, I want to see him as an already established role player. Maybe not like a star, maybe a star in the making, but just like a good role player right from the get go. Right. That's what I expect from Murray. And I don't think, yeah. What were you going to say?
I think the one thing I forgot to say there was it's also not just being NBA ready, but it's like the fit with the Kings. Like this Kings, he's going to fit in for the reasons that you're saying. Like he'll be able to, shoot when the ball comes to him. He runs the floor well. He can contribute on the glass very well. He's a really high effort, high intensity defender. He does all the things that Mike Brown would want to see. What you'd want to see along Fox and Sabonis. There's so much that plays into, what he has to do. And he doesn't, and, I think it's going to benefit him. I know you do make a good point. His stats are not going to be exceptional because he's not going to be a focal point. He's not going to be on a team that's essentially tanking or not doing very well at all. And you're basically the primary scorer as a rookie and you're still figuring things out or whatever the deal is. It's not like that at all. And, but it is a situation where the carpet is rolled out for him to just have that like pluggability. And I think that could benefit him, especially if he's not that focal point where he's going to get open looks. He's going to be able to cut, and he's so good at that and whatnot. That I think he really does have a good chance to win Rookie of the Year for those reasons. And just the fact that, like I said, NBA ready, high maturity. I think it's important that transition period for rookies is tough. And I think he's got to prove that isn't going to affect him to such a significant degree. It's hard to tell, but I think your point is well taken and you're being very realistic. And I could see that being the case too. Absolutely. But
yeah. Well, and just to reiterate my point one more time, it's going to sound like a broken record, but I think Keegan Murray, I expect him to have a rookie season like Tyrese Halliburton had. Just like you looked at this guy and you're like, this is a guy who's going to be good in this league, very mature, right off the bat, and probably I think Halliburton ended up 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting behind LaMelo and Anthony Edwards. But again, that's because his role wasn't that of Anthony Edwards's in Minnesota or LaMelo's in Charlotte. They were starting right off, right from the get-go, and Halliburton was coming off the bench to Fox, and his role was a little limited. He still ended up 3rd in Rookie of the Year voting, but you can even argue that Halliburton might have as good of a career as those two players. But that's kind of I think that's the rookie season that I see for Murray. Just a very mature guy. He's going to do his job really well as a rookie. And yeah, just look like he's going to be someone in this league.
Yeah. And I think, Davion Mitchell, despite not having a great statistical rookie season, I think if you watched him last year, saw the progress he made, the way he closed it out when opportunities opened up for him, that was a good rookie season. I think Keegan Murray can add an element of statistical efficiency, but I think you're right. It'll be interesting. But just transitioning now to Davion Mitchell, it's such a different situation for him, not only in the fact that he's going from year one to year two, which is such a difference, but, there's no Halliburton. He's number two in the point guard situation. And like we were just saying, when he either was opened up, he started playing better when his role was clear, and his role was more like, prominent. When he was able to take over the starting role as the point guard after De'Aaron Fox hurt his hand, he played so well. And it was great because it was at the end of the year. He was able to build confidence and kind of figure out how the league works and whatnot. And it seems like he's put himself in a position already to build consistency in year two, which was a problem in year one, as it is for a lot of players. But, he also has the external factor of the role and how much Mike Brown's going to favor him because of his defense. I think he's going to be able to play a lot, and I think that benefits him. And I think he usually thrives when the role kind of expands, at least recently,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, he was up with like the top rookies in the rookie class last year when he was starting. His role this year will be interesting. He's back on the bench, and I mean, he was always that backup point guard because Halliburton and Fox are starting together. But I think he's a workhorse. He's been working hard this offseason. He has. And it was very promising to see the end of his season too. His shot started falling a little more, like you're saying, and it's weird it's always hard to, I don't know. He's like a backup point guard. I don't know what my expectations for him are going into next season, just because it's like, well, what do you expect from a backup point guard? But I think, I think the X factor, and we all know, is his defense. And that's what's really that's how he's going to make his name in this league. I think he's going to be solid. He's a good distributor, facilitator, and hopefully he can hit his 3-point shots a little more consistently this year at a higher clip. But it's that defense, and that defense is going to earn him, those closing minutes and, like I said, make his name in this league because of it. So I think I've said this before. Like Davion Mitchell, I think his goal should be to make one of the all NBA defensive teams this year because he has that potential in him. He's going to have more minutes in him this year. I mean, he can do it, so might as well go for it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely fair to point out, and I think it's also important not just to say that he's arguably probably the best defender on the team, but he's making it a point of emphasis to be a vocal leader on defense. And I think he noted the fact that like when Sabonis got there, it's like Sabonis is a communicator on the court on both ends. And that made such a difference on defense. And for a guy that's not super physically talented on the defensive end in terms of Sabonis, not really a rim protector, not super quick laterally, but he plays smart and he's a communicator and he can help make guys better with his court awareness. And you add that element with Davion Mitchell, and it's just like, I mean, all the things that can branch off of that, both what he can do and the guys can do around him, and in terms of like facilitating a Mike Brown defense, that is going to be huge. And I think that could definitely put him in a position, to do exactly what you're saying. And I think that's definitely the goal for him. And with the work ethic he's got, he could definitely do that. I mean, I don't really expect any transition period with the defense. The offense is more of a question mark. We'll have to see what he does in camp. The big question is kind of like, what is he going to be able to do? Is he going to be able to hit threes consistently? How's his form doing? I know he was like altering things throughout the year. Again, he's a rookie, but can he find that efficiency and from scoring all over the floor? And, I guess we'll have to see on that, but that defense is going to make a huge factor, make a huge difference. And like you're saying, he's playing himself into a lot of those closing lineups, especially if the Kings have a lead or mostly in the lead, Defense is just as important as late game shots. A late game stop. You have to have a late game stop in combination with a late game bucket. Those things have to go hand in hand. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah, Mitchell, I mean, hopefully he can, I guess it sounds like, be a good two-way player, really. I mean, he has the defense in him. He's not going to be so much of a 3-and-D guy because as a backup point guard, you have to do more than just 3-and-D. But, even if he can just be a good facilitator and then, play alongside Fox. And I think I've said this in the past on podcasts, like him and Fox can play together and you just throw Davion on the better opponent on defense. So you can save Fox's energy for offense. And then and you just throw Davion in a corner or, at top on the wing. And if he can hit those looks, it's just, it's going to make the world a difference. And, that's what the Kings did this year. They went out and got shooters and Monk and Herter and, Davis is still on the team and he's proven that he can be, a good 3-point shooter. And, Davion Mitchell, he has some competition. If that three's not falling, I mean, yeah, he's still going to get those backup point guard minutes, but, I don't know. It goes both ways. Like you said, like, yeah, you need shots to stop, but, you also need to. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I have my window open. I have my window open, and I think a little kid just rode by on a bike. But, but like I was saying, and what you were saying was that you need at the end of games, you need stops, but you also need to hit shots, and it's going to be an interesting, predicament for Brown if Davion Mitchell isn't hitting those shots. It's just going to be a lot better if Mitchell can shoot.
Definitely.
And he's shown he can, and let's hope he can continue.
Yeah, consistency is key. But I think what you're talking about with that, ability to guard the better offensive threat alongside Fox and give Fox essentially more of a break on defense. We talk a lot about who's going to start at the two. I still think Herter's like the guy, and he could very well start all 82. Everything could work out great. But I mean, like you might see maybe a guy's coming in real hot, and Mike Brown knows. I don't know. I don't want to like come up with some crazy hypothetical that's never going to happen. But like, it won't be crazy. Injuries, matchups, different factors play into things. It wouldn't be crazy to see Davion Mitchell start a few games along Fox. Is that crazy? For that very reason that you're talking about, to be able to slow down and stunt a guy from the beginning, you don't want to have to bring him in off the bench and try to slow him down at halftime after he's already dropped 30 on you or whatever in the first half. I don't know. Didn't Brandon Ingram drop like close to that? I don't know. I'm thinking of the game last year. But yeah, it's just like you need, specifically for that guard position, if Mitchell can do that, I mean, that can make a huge difference. And with such a defensive-oriented coach, that's going to happen probably.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be opposed to, like platooning guys, kind of like in baseball, left field, right field, second base. It's like, we need this guy's going to play second today for the matchup, lefty versus righty. But, I mean, the Kings are guard heavy, and the most of their talent is at those guard positions. And I mean, I think Herter is, and we've said this already, he's going to probably be the starting shooting guard. But I mean, what if Herter goes cold, or his defense isn't as good as we thought, or Monk's just on fire, or you need a stop, and you need in Mitchell's, continuing to play his good D. I don't know. I think we're going to see a lot of changes at the shooting guard throughout the year. I think it will mostly be Herter, but I don't think he starts all 82 games at the shooting guard position. And I think some of those minutes starts might go to Mitchell.
Mm-hmm. And I think a few guys have already referred to the fact that it's like the lineup and the rotation is still very much up in the air. I think, whether it's that guard position or whether it's even the power forward position, like it's not a lock that Keegan Murray starts necessarily. I think like Herter, I think it's a pretty good chance that you're going to see that, the Fox, Herter, Barnes, Murray, and Sabonis lineup. that's definitely the favored one, but it could really be anything. And with the rotation, the closing lineups, I mean, those are all supplementary questions that are very fascinating. And, again, it's just like talking about competition being a theme here. And, you've got to love a second-year player like Davion Mitchell adding things in the mix there. Maybe to zoom out here in kind of closing. I know another theme of this podcast has been the fact that we don't know anything because training camp starts today. We don't have a very good idea of what guys are showing initially, but it's always fun to have a little premature kind of like power rankings, especially when so much is riding on this year. It feels like, or there's just so much excitement around this year, I guess you would say. It's interesting to think about power rankings. And I know that Mark Stein did one like a week or two ago. And, he had the Kings at number 21, which, maybe you can tell by that number. It's like, okay, that's an interesting place to put them. And again, we don't know a whole lot. But he did list that he had Portland, Los Angeles, the Lakers, Chicago, and the Knicks ahead of them. 17, 18, 19, and 20. And, I'm not asking for like a full 30-team power rankings, but just kind of addressing that. Are the Knicks better than the Kings?
I mean, I don't know how the Knicks are better than the Kings. Yeah. I mean, I think the Kings are more of a high teen team than a low 20s team. And I don't know. I couldn't name you the worst teams than the Kings off the top of my head without looking at something. But no, the Knicks aren't. You can easily make a case the Kings are better than the Trailblazers. But yeah, the Knicks, I don't know. They signed Jalen Brunson. I can't believe that was such a big storyline. Maybe because they were signing a backup point guard for so much. And I know Jalen Brunson's no ordinary backup point guard, but it's not like he's going to be like an all-star next year or anywhere close to it. I think he's a good player, but I don't know.
They're all riding on the narrative that like, oh, he's away from Doncic now. He's going to tear it up. We'll have to see. But I think I think that's the thing is I think you can make the argument they're better than the Portland Trailblazers. I think that's where the conversation is. I don't know why. And also I don't know. Maybe though because the Bulls have some very talented players, individual players. Like maybe you can make the argument that the Bulls are better than the Trailblazers and the Kings. I don't know. I'm not making that argument. The East, and I mean the West is, obviously got a lot of talent in it. But I think that conversation is more about because maybe in the Lakers too, because it's like those three teams. That's a big deal. What happens with those three teams: Portland, Sacramento, and Los Angeles. And it's just like I'm not saying you have to get high on the Kings before the season starts, but I do think that they should be at least above the Knicks there. I don't know.
No, I don't know. It's a rank, yeah.
And I still believe that Russell Westbrook. I still believe that Russell Westbrook can make things difficult for the Lakers. I don't know that the Lakers are going to let him sink their season because he can definitely sink their season. But I don't know. It's interesting that he's still there. I don't know if he's going to play or see the floor, but I don't know. It's not like I'm not necessarily betting on Los Angeles having everything ironed out as they hit the floor in October, But,
yeah, I mean, it's nothing to bet on, really. You saw what happened last year.
Yeah.
And again, Westbrook's still there. Mm-hmm.
Just questions all the way around, but it's just like, I don't know. It's like you're just asking us to talk about that by saying the Knicks are better.
And they probably do, and here we are talking about
it. I know. Watch the Knicks win 48 games.
Jalen Brunson's an all-star. You're just going to be eating our words. Episode 26. They're just going to be mocking us.
Yeah. Let's It's
Number
ridiculous.
26, Kent Bazemore.
Oh man. Now Kent
Right?
Bazemore's wearing 24 this year now. Taking Buddy's
Oh,
number. I saw that
okay.
on the roster chart.
Oh, well, never
Um,
mind. First
yeah.
stint, Bazemore. Is anyone
Yeah.
26?
Yeah, he was 26 with I think with the Lakers too. Or I don't know.
I think he's usually 20.
But he was 20 when he started with the Warriors, and then I think he was wearing 26 most of his career with like Portland and Sacramento and all those teams.
Well, you know what? While we're talking about Kent Bazemore, and he's not like a hot topic or anything.
He is with
I
me.
okay. I see a lot on social media. No experts, no like verified sources saying these things, but people are having the discussion and who's going to get cut from the training camp to make the 15-man roster. A lot of people are saying Kent Bazemore is going to get cut. And these are just guesses, from Kings fans. I personally don't agree with it. You don't have another backup small forward, and he's really your only guy. But I mean, what are your thoughts? Is Bazemore pretty much a lock in your eyes to make this team?
He's close to a lock by default.
Yeah,
Got
right.
experience. He brings a lot to the bench. But he did have a terrible year in Los Angeles. And he is, the oldest player on this team. So like he's got a lot of questions to answer before anybody just says, yeah, he's going to be the primary one behind Barnes, accumulating minutes. Now we talk a lot about the fact that they have a lot of depth at shooting guard and that the 6'9" wingspan on Terence Davis, he can they can fill in, and even Keegan Murray was talking about him as a power forward. You can't necessarily rule him out playing more on the wing. I mean, like I guess they could kind of back up by committee in some way. You wouldn't want them to do that. You'd like to have a dependable person, and I still think Bazemore can be that guy. But there's questions to see him get cut. I think you'd have to talk about our boys KZ Okpala or Chima Moneke or even Sam Merrill like tearing it up, like proving that to prove in training camp that you deserve backup minutes behind Barnes, which also entails cutting Bazemore. I mean, that's kind of that's a little close to a pipe dream. Not impossible. Those guys are confident, like I said. I don't know if I caught anything from KZ Okpala, but Moneke, so much confidence, referring to himself as the best one of the best cutters in the world, or the best cutter in the world. You gotta love that. And but you'd really have to see them actually perform. It's Bazemore's job to lose, but he still really has to prove that he can have a bounce back year. That's a big thing. And we're talking about kind of how this Kings team seems to be kind of like building momentum and chemistry and stuff even before camp starts. And I think Bazemore is kind of a part of that. And so we'll see. And I think the experience and kind of the team cheerleader type aspect of him and locker room presence, that'll definitely play into his favor. But I don't know. I don't know if he necessarily gets cut, but he's got a lot to prove. I definitely think that. And I think that's the biggest question on the Kings roster easily. Like without any doubt in my mind, the depth behind Barnes, which it seems pretty consistent because it seems to be a consistent concern. But we'll have to see. It's definitely, you can also say that having Bazemore coming into camp, despite the season he had last year, is still pretty much better than seasons past. The situation,
Yeah, I mean, I think it is Bazemore's job to lose. I mean, even after his poor season last year with the Lakers, I mean, he's an experienced NBA veteran at this point in his career. He's proven that he can be better, and he's a year removed from having a decent year in Golden State where he shot the three ball pretty well, wasn't like a liability anywhere.
That's important to point out. He had a great, and it was a surprise that he, didn't stick around there, but go on.
Yeah, and he wanted a better opportunity to win, so he went to LA. He leaves Golden State to he goes to LA because he thought he had a better opportunity to win there, which is funny. And
Kent Bazemore!
and so I just, you need that guy behind Barnes. I say it a million times. I've said it a million times because you do. Barnes gets burned out really easily. And Bazemore's done it before. Not first time doing it on the Kings either. He's been Barnes' backup in the past a couple times, really. Once for the Warriors and once for the Kings. And like you said, I mean, Okpala or Maneke really have to prove that they can not be a liability in their 15, 20 minutes that they'll play a game. As Barnes' backup, maybe even less. I can see Bazemore averaging more around 15 minutes a game with a mix of Herter or Davis at the 3 at times. But I think Bazemore will make the team. And just hope he has a better year than he did last year. And he said he's excited to come back. He loves the fans here. And I think he said that he even wanted to come back, but it didn't work out or something. Or anyways,
And just one more thing. I mean, like, I'm kind of one of the more like skeptics on Kent Bazemore coming in this year. But one of the things you do have to give him credit for in relation to Herter, Monk, and Davis is he's probably the best defender out of them. I mean, like
true.
At his age, you might see some decline there. But I think like he can be the best defender out of that lot of 4. Since we're talking about a situation where, like we said at the beginning of this is a big mix of talent. It's going to be interesting to see how all these pieces work out. And even it kind of like the lines blur between positional lines. And that's just that's just the way it is in the modern NBA. And so that's kind of another good sign of this team. But Kent Bazemore, we'll have to see, but it'd be surprised he gets cut. And this is definitely a better backup going into camp than we've had in recent years.
Yeah, and it really is. But I don't know. I'm running out of time. Do you have any closing thoughts on this?
I think that's it for now. I mean, we'll have to see how training camp plays out, and we'll definitely delve into that as stuff comes out. So, stay tuned to the podcast and to the articles and to the other stuff.
Yeah, just keep checking in. Unfortunately, we will have to skip next week's podcast. I'll be on vacation. Won't be able to make it to a mic, but we'll still have our articles coming out, and we'll jump back on it the week after. So that's it. I appreciate everyone tuning in and listening to us. This is King's Talk presented by Cap City Crown. Until next time, have a good one.